Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, I've just got a very small speech to make, but I have noticed, and this is my observation about the teams, this morning, the 6-7s, you couldn't shake a stick. There were people all over the place. And then as each subsequent team has come, it's less and less. So I do commend you very much for coming to watch the team today. I think it's very nice that they've got some support. We're appreciative that we have been given permission to conduct our grand finals here in this august chamber of Parliament. Debating provides a formal framework in which students learn to conduct themselves in a civil and courteous manner to each other, the adjudicator and their opposition, and to abide by the rules. The ability to master anything in life is a challenge. Debating presents a challenge to students. It challenges their research and reasoning skills, how to organise and formulate arguments, how to communicate more clearly, and how to examine and consider a case that might be, at times, in opposition to their own personal views. Debating builds character. It requires fortitude, diligence and motivation. In order to have made it to the grand finals, the debaters here today have had to be determined, self-disciplined, dedicated and hard-working, and I commend them for these attributes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2023 Year 10 Division Debating Essay Grand Final Debate. My name is Abhiraj Singh, and I am the chairman of this debate. The timekeeper is Bonnie Pettigrew. The topic of this debate is that we should incentivize women to have children. The affirmative team seated to my right is from Glenunga International High School. The negative team seated to my left is from Pembroke School. This grand final debate will be judged by a panel of 5 adjudicators, who are Ilya Aidman, James Baker, Lachlan Hemsley, Liliana France, and Sophie Zabo. The speaking time of this debate is 6 minutes. A single warning bell will sound at 5 minutes, and a double bell will sound at 6 minutes. A continuous bell will ring at 30 seconds after the final bell. Please switch off your mobile phones and other electronic devices. Having said that, I declare this debate open and call upon the first affirmative speaker, Addison Fan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that we should incentivize women to have children. We define the topic as follows. According to the Oxford Dictionary, should is used to show what is right and appropriate in reference to a possible event or situation, while incentivize is to encourage somebody to behave in a particular way by offering them a reward. In this context, the most sensible definition for women is adult biological females of childbearing age. Lastly, to have children is the act of giving birth and actively taking care of the children. Other means such as adoption may be included where having biological children is not possible on a case-by-case basis. In this topic, incentives for women to have children include payments and services offered by the government to subsidize costs, prevent potential setbacks, and support parental care. According to Services Australia, the government is currently providing the newborn upfront payment and supplement, along with parental leave pay and other assistance funds. In addition, other forms of incentives such as free childcare and more flexible work hours for parents are also worth noting. It is crucial to note that incentives are in place to encourage and not to force women into having children, and women are totally entitled to make this decision. We, the affirmative team, believe that this statement is true. Today, as a first speaker, I'll be talking to you about how incentivizing women to have children empowers motherhood and women's decision to have children, as well as bolsters cultural preservation. Our second speaker will be talking about why incentives are necessary to support the aging population and the economy, and the psychological and health benefits of having children. Our third speaker will rebut and sum up our team case. I'm going to discuss 2 points. The first point is that incentives for having children enable more women to do so while empowering motherhood. According to The Guardian, the latest ABS statistics reveals Australia's fertility rate was 1.7, well below the so-called replacement rate needed to keep the population growing. This is not because fewer people want to have children. In fact, 3/4 of Australian women and 70% of men aged 20 to 24 either have or want children. One of the main reasons for this is because of the financial burden associated with child rearing. Report published by the Australian Institute of Family Studies suggests the weekly cost of raising a child range from $140 to $170. Apart from this, however, according to the Sydney Morning Herald, women spend 3.5 hours every day on childcare, which is more than 50% that of male parents. Incentives such as paid parental leave and lower childcare fees provide security and ensure equal opportunities, thus reducing potential drawbacks and enabling families without sufficient resources to make the decision to have children. Furthermore, the assumption that women with children will dedicate more time to domestic work and thus declining work performance is still relevant, as according to The Guardian, women could earn less after birth and face barriers in career progression. This could be addressed if flexible working hours are available to shorten the absence period and allow for alternative care from both parents. Research has shown that paternity leave enhances mothers' health and strengthens bonds between fathers and children, according to the New York Times. Ultimately, these incentives serve to value and recognize the strenuous process of pregnancy, thus showing that society endorses and appreciates the work of motherhood. Now to my second point. Incentivizing women to have children reinforces cultural preservation and allows connections to form beyond generations. According to the Australian Multicultural Foundation, culture and its heritage reflect and shape values, beliefs, and aspirations, thereby defining a person's national identity. It is crucial to preserve cultural heritage, for it upholds our integrity as individuals. According to a case study by Guttas, Pembroke et al., cultural preservation is substantially attributed to conveying the traditions to later generations, specifically referring to children. Through their upbringing and environment, children get accustomed to cultural factors and construct a set of understandings of themselves as individuals and members of society, ultimately promoting and keeping the heritage alive. This is especially significant to indigenous people, as their cultural representations are often distinct from those of mainstream society. Information from the World Bank. Therefore, the legacy of indigenous peoples' traditions and social values created from collective ancestral ties must be sustained and passed on to future generations. As Melanie Briggs, founder and director of the first Aboriginal-led maternity model of care in Australia, writes for the Guardian, quote, "Birthing is the first ceremonial journey we go through to leave the spirit world to come into the physical world. Our connection to our ancestors and our culture provides our people with a sense of belonging and grounds our ways of knowing, being, and doing. Therefore, through incentivizing childbirth, cultural legacy unique to each family and community could be passed down to generations, further strengthening and conveying the heritage which consolidates our identities." So, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, incentivizing women to have children empowers motherhood and enables a wider population to consider childbirth. The incentives also promote cultural preservation and assist connection through generations. As Maria Shriver has said, quote, "Having kids, the responsibility of rearing good, kind, ethical, and responsible human beings is the biggest job anyone can embark on. So, let the journey be smoother and more accessible." Thank you.
I now call upon the first negative speaker, Amy Song.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for today's debate is that we should incentivise women to have children. We, the negative team, strongly believe this statement to be false. Whilst we mostly agree with the definition, we would like to make some additions. We would like to differentiate between incentive and support, as the affirmative team's definition does not align with ours. According to Oxford, incentives in this regard refer only to extra benefits aimed at encouraging women to have children. Support, on the other hand, is more about providing basic services for mothers who already have children or are already planning on it. Whilst there is a grey area when it comes to incentive versus support, things like maternity leave and healthcare are necessary support as they are basic services that help mothers, whilst cash bonuses and tax cuts are clearly incentives that will bring in new mothers. Whilst these incentives also support mothers, there is a difference between providing support for mothers versus encouraging people to be mothers. This is why we would like to make this distinction between support and incentive clear. Furthermore, I would like to rebut the affirmative team's first speaker. The affirmative team has tried to tell you that this would result in cultural preservation. However, as our second speaker will elaborate on, there are many better ways to get women to have kids, which was seen in South Tyrol, Italy, where they have most family support services in the country and consequently the highest birth rates. Additionally, an incentive does not always work, as seen with the baby bonus having a, quote, moderate result, according to Uni Melbourne. I'll be presenting 2 points today. First, I will argue how having children is a deeply personal decision that should not be influenced by the government. My second point will discuss how incentives can pressure women into thinking that having children is expected. Our second speaker, Jason, will argue how there are better solutions than incentives. His second point will discuss how we should instead be supporting women. Our third speaker, Zach, will rebut and summarise our team's case. Now to my first point, that the decision to have children is extremely complex and involves multifaceted considerations when it comes to housing, health effects, educational fees, disturbances to work, and social concerns. Putting money or other incentives on the table muddles and dilutes the primary reasons for why people want children. Having children is a life-changing decision. Why should the government be swaying people in either direction? What about people who are unable to have children or those who are simply not ready yet? A decision this impactful is equally as personal and should not be up to the government to sway. Furthermore, providing monetary incentives for having children might actually lure people into a false sense of security. When having a child comes with an upfront cash payment, this money will be pleasant in the short run, but it won't change the financial stability of the family when it comes to caring for the child in the long term. According to SBS, raising a child from birth to the end of school costs more than $400,000, with upwards of $50,000 being in the first year. An incentive will realistically only make a negligible dent in this. It will only ever act as a band-aid for the parents' bank accounts, nice in the short term, but it will never be able to guarantee financial security for the child's whole life. If the parents don't have a stable income source, for example, then this incentive will not change that. For children with parents that waste money on gambling or alcohol, this incentive is not going to change that. For parents that desperately need money, this incentive will not cut it. Therefore, should the government be trying to sway women on such an important yet intimate issue, especially when the incentive is nothing more than a placebo? We believe this to be wrong. My second point will be about how incentives send the message that having children is beneficial to society, potentially pressuring women into thinking that it is the correct option. If the government is wanting women to have children, we not only imply that this is normal, it also sends the message to women that having children is the right choice. This message can harm those who do not or cannot have children, and it can reinforce outdated gender roles. Whilst an incentive is non-binding and only soft pressure, the underlying implications of this pressure will undoubtedly harm many women. We acknowledge that in some cases, incentives may offer women more freedom to have children, but these are only edge cases. For most women, having an incentive pressures their options. Will women have more freedom to choose if one of their options is glaringly encouraged by the government? Instead of incentives, we should focus on supporting women with better education, maternal services and resources, allowing them to make informed decisions based on their own needs. Regardless of how an incentive is packaged, even with good intentions, giving government money to people for choosing an option implies that it is the correct and expected choice. However, should there be a government-endorsed right option when it comes to having children? And why should the government decide what the right option is? Incentives are sending a wrong and harmful message to women. In conclusion, incentivising women to have children comes with many flaws, such as allowing the government to influence over people's most personal decisions and the false sense of security that it can bring to mothers. As our second speaker will elaborate on, there are better options because the fact is we should be supporting, not incentivising women. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, that is why we, the Negative Team, strongly believe that we should not incentivise women to have children. Thank you.
I now call upon the second affirmative speaker, Madison Mitchell-Smith.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that we should incentivise women to have children. We, the affirmative team, believe that this statement is true. We disagree with the first negative speaker's amendment to the definition that supports include maternity leave, while incentives are extra additions such as tax cuts. We disagree with this amendment because supports can be incentives because they make it easier to have children. It doesn't have to necessarily be monetary. The first negative speaker has also said that we should support women with better maternity services. These incentives can and will help women, so we should do that. Our first speaker has already explained that incentivising women to have children reinforces cultural preservation and allows connections to form beyond generations, and that implementing incentives for having children empowers mothers and enables more women to decide to have children. Today I'll be talking to you about 2 points. My first point is that there needs to be enough people of working age to support the economy. According to the Australian Government's Institute of Health and Welfare, Australia has an ageing population. On June 30, 2020, there was an estimated 4.2 million Australians aged 65 and older, representing 16% of Australia's total population. The number of people aged 85 and over has increased from 0.5% to 1.1% and is expected to rise to between 3.6% and 4.4%. In 2066. This is because there is an increasing life expectancy and decreasing fertility rates. This is a problem as decreasing fertility rates means that there will be a decrease in working age people who are necessary to support the economy and the elderly. According to the ABC News and Super Guide, Australians become eligible for the age pension at the age of 67 and an average retiring age of 62 to 65 years of age, with women often retiring 1 to 3 years before men. Once these people have retired and no longer receive work pay, they must access other ways of receiving money. One of the ways is a pension, with about 62% of Australians over the age of 65 receiving a part or full government age pension, information from the Australia Super. There needs to be enough people working and paying tax to the government to fund these pensions and keep the economy going. According to the Australian Government Treasury, the working age people in the total population is predicted to fall by 7% to 60% in 2050. Meaning that the workforce available will shrink. This means that there will be a shortage of workers for jobs, impacting all sectors of the economy. As stated from an article by H.S. Borgi on Investopedia, a shortage of workers from an ageing population can result in supply shortages of qualified workers, and an economy that cannot fill in-demand occupations faces declining productivity, higher labour costs, delayed business expansion, and reduced international competitiveness. To combat these effects, employers could look to a flow of highly skilled immigrants, which can become problematic since many credentials are not accepted by Australian employers, especially if the credentials were obtained outside of Australia, West Europe, or North America. Therefore, it is very important to keep the working population greater than the ageing population, which is obtained through increasing fertility rates. This would then allow more workers to fill gaps in the industry, support the Australian economy and the elderly. Thus, to support Australia's ageing population and to combat the expenses that come with this, we should incentivise women to have children. My second point is that there are physiological and health benefits from having children. According to The Conversation, by the age of 40, men and women desire 1.5 more children than they already have. If couples do not have the amount of children they desire, this can cause regret and impact their well-being. Also, couples are now often having children later in life, but with a natural decrease in fertility as a woman ages, this might not be possible. Not to mention that desiring children later in life can come with many health risks. Since it has become increasingly common for women to have children at a later age, and incentivizing children could encourage women to have children earlier, this could combat these health risks that come from old age pregnancy. According to Healthline, the risks of having children after 50 years include preeclampsia, which can be life-threatening, gestational diabetes, ectopic pregnancy, high risk of cesarean delivery, miscarriage, and stillbirth. By incentivizing women to have children, we could eliminate this regret and decrease these health risks. It is also important to note that children have a direct benefit on their parents. According to PsychReg, children can lower their parents' blood pressure, can entitle parents to tax savings, teach unselfishness, and give a higher satisfaction and well-being than people without children. These factors mean that parents often benefit from having children, and it can be good for their well-being. According to Big Think, over the span of 30 years, women with 2 or more children are more productive than those with none in their work careers. This benefit is not only good for the individual, but for the employer as well. This means having children reduces the impact of regret from not having more children or any at all, benefits the parents and increases mothers' productivity. Therefore, we should incentivize women to have children. So, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, we should incentivize women to have children because we need enough people of working age to support the economy and Australia's ageing population, and for the physiological and health benefits the parents receive from having children. As said by Hillary Clinton, it takes a village to raise a child. This applies to end-of-life care as well, so let's start making that village. Thank you.
I now call upon the second negative speaker, Jason Kang.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that we should incentivize women to have children. We, the negative team, strongly believe this statement to be false. First, I'll rebut some of the affirmative team's points before talking to you about my points. The affirmative team's first speaker has tried to tell you that maternity leave should be an incentive. Ladies and gentlemen, how is having maternity leave an incentive for having children? Considering the emotional and physical toll having children leaves on women, shouldn't maternity leave be the bare minimum we need to do to support our women's emotional and physical well-being? If something as necessary as a maternity leave counts as an incentive, then pretty much every service we offer to women also counts. I'll be presenting 2 points tonight. Firstly, I'll argue how there are better solutions than incentives. My second point will talk about how we should be planning long term. On to my first point. Proponents of the programs such as the baby bonus often state that incentivizing women to have children increases birth rates. However, how significant is this? According to the University of Melbourne, when the baby bonus was first introduced in Australia in 2003, the birth rates only increased by 3% in the first year, and by the start of COVID, the birth rate had fallen below pre-baby bonus levels. This result was described as underwhelming and unsuccessful by the uni, as it had a negligible long-term impact. Furthermore, this small bulge in childbirths is not entirely due to the baby bonus. According to the Daily Telegraph, this increase was due to a whole generation of 1980s women deciding to have children in their 30s, being the first generation to have children this late, thus coinciding with the 2010 baby boom. From our current knowledge, whilst incentives might have some positive effect on birth rates, they are far from effective. This is because they don't tackle the root of the issue. According to Compare the Market, only 1/5 of Australians who don't want kids aren't going to have kids because of monetary issues. Other factors, such as work-life balance, lack of adequate medical or maternal support, and unavailable childcare services, also play a significant role. As a case study from the BBC, the Italian region of South Tyrol has a birth rate of 1.67, compared to the national average of 1.3. According to the researcher Mirko Tonin, this can be attributed to 2 reasons: flexible work and childcare availability. In South Tyrol, employers offer significantly more part-time and work-at-home options for women, making it easier for them to combine motherhood with work. Furthermore, the childcare system was also deemed to be the most extensive and available in the entire country, with the majority of parents sending their toddlers to childcare instead of to their grandparents. This shows that improving work flexibility for women and boosting childcare, two ideas that are absolutely not incentives, has increased birth rates by almost 30% compared to the rest of Italy. Increasing birth rates requires a multifaceted and complex approach. Simply giving money to people has never been and is never going to be the most effective solution. Incentivizing women to have children is only a band-aid solution that overlooks the societal reasons people don't have children. And examples like the baby bonus show that the long-term effects of incentives are minimal at best. If we want real results, we need to tackle the root of the problem and address issues like work flexibility and childcare availability. My second point will argue that we should be implementing long-term solutions. Incentives, as proposed by the affirmative team, will help families financially. However, instead of giving people money, why can't we just make raising children cheaper? It sounds identical, but there are some key differences. The reason why raising children now is so expensive is because many essential services for children are not subsidized, meaning the parents have to pay most of the bill. To make raising children cheaper, we could subsidize childcare services, health insurance for babies, or subsidize businesses who offer extended maternity leave or flexible work options for women, just like in South Tyrol. On a grander scale, we could implement measures to increase housing affordability, or for some countries without public education, they can subsidize more education. Both of these measures will not only make raising children cheaper, but they also come with so many other benefits that I do not need to list. If we just give people a monetary incentive without addressing the overpriced cost of raising a child, then we are simply turning a blind eye to the root of their financial issues. Whilst incentives do have some short-term benefits, when dealing with population decline and demographics, short-term band-aid solutions are inappropriate. Our actions now will affect the lives of people generations down the line. So therefore, we should be trying to implement policies that increase the birth rate for generations down the line. A short-sighted mindset is irresponsible when dealing with an issue so perennial in nature. The whole point of a national or state government is to work on large-scale projects that individuals cannot solve on their own. When the nation is confronted with the high cost of raising a child, is it not irresponsible if the government just gives people money to fix the problem by themselves? The government should instead be using their immense wealth and power to tackle the root problems and find a solution that makes raising children cheaper. Incentivizing women to have children is not only inefficient and harmful, but it's also grossly irresponsible if a government chooses such a short-term solution when they have the power to implement a long-term solution. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, that is why we, the negative team, strongly believe that we should not incentivize women to have children. Thank you.
I now call upon the third affirmative speaker, Tahan Pereira.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that we should incentivize women to have children. We, the affirmative team, believe that this statement is undeniably true. The second negative speaker said that incentives are just giving money. This is false. Incentives are anything that reduce the burden for women and encourage them to have have babies. Incentives don't have to be just giving money. As a matter of fact, this is a red herring fallacy. This is when a speaker uses an argument that diverts or distracts our attention to another subject. This was used when they talked about incentives as a monetary, when our team already defined it as other options that are non-monetary, such as free childcare and free maternity leave. The second negative speaker also used a straw man fallacy. This is when the speaker restates an argument incorrectly to make it easier to rebut. This was used when rebutting our second affirmative speaker. Paid maternity leave and childcare were examples of incentives, not necessarily what should be used or would work. Therefore, this argument is invalid. negative speaker said that incentivizing results in more pressure from the government and less freedom for women. This is completely false. As suggested in our definition, incentivizing could involve paid maternity leave, free or affordable childcare, flexible working hours for parents, and tax benefits. And all these possible methods of incentivizing only make the process of having a child, looking after a child easier. They don't force women to have children. This means that the incentives will allow society to recognize the value of motherhood. However, women that do not want to have children will not be forced to in any manner or form. The final decision of having or not having a child will come down to the parent, meaning that there will be no restriction of freedom. Hence, the negative speaker's argument is completely invalid, and we should incentivize women to have children. The first negative speaker mentioned the high costs of having a child, making it infeasible to incentivize childbirth. While this is true, providing support for mothers and incentivizing them to have children is a way to recognize the integral role of mothers in society and reducing their burden. An example of a successful incentive can be seen in Scotland, where the Scottish government pledged that, quote, each baby born in Scotland will be given their own baby box, according to an article by NHS Inform. The article goes on to explain that the baby box, quote, helped families prepare for the arrival of their baby and contains essential items. This incentive was a way of recognizing the importance of motherhood in society. As explained by motherforlife.co.uk, quote, motherhood is the most important job there is. It shapes our future. Furthermore, the incentives mentioned in our definition aim to mitigate this problem. Incentives such as affordable childcare, a baby box, and a baby bonus all aim to reduce the high cost and mitigate this issue. Therefore, we should incentivize women to have children, as it successfully recognizes the vitality of motherhood in society, and the incentives can mitigate the health costs of having a child. The first negative speaker also said that incentives give women a false sense of security. This is false. Incentivizing is a way of helping out and reducing the burden for women that have children. As our first and second speaker have already eloquently explained, incentivizing has a variety of psychological benefits, it empowers motherhood, is essential for a functioning society, and it respects the traditions of the Aboriginal community. Therefore, we should incentivize women to have children, and the negative speaker's argument is invalid. Our first affirmative speaker stated that incentivizing childbirth empowers motherhood and that incentivizing strengthens cultural preservation. Our second affirmative speaker said that incentivizing women to have children has many psychological benefits for parents and it increases the size of the workforce, which is essential for a functioning society. So, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, we should incentivize women to have children, as a higher birth rate is essential for a functioning society. As Joyce Banda once said, the seeds of success in every nation are planted in its women and children. Thank you.
I would now like to call upon the third negative speaker, Zachary Yiend.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that we should incentivize women to have children. We, the negative team, strongly believe this statement to be false. I'll begin tonight by rebutting some of the affirmative team's arguments, followed by a summary of our team's case. The affirmative team tried to rebut our clarification between support and incentive by saying it was monetary. We said it was monetary. We did not say this. We said it was about intent. They were the ones that brought that up when they said when they were talking about free childcare, which is monetary. As our team has pushed throughout this debate, they are very different for a few main reasons. Firstly, increasing birth rate. However, for support structures, the affirmative team's first and second speakers have tried to tell you that population decline is a big issue and solving it could fix aging population and preserve our culture. Whilst we recognise the issue of underpopulation and the issues it brings, in the scope of this debate, this point is flawed. The fact is, as our first speaker mentioned, this is a worldwide topic, and we must think about it holistically. We currently have a healthy worldwide population density with healthy average age. We are not in desperate need for more or less people. And whilst we recognise that some countries would benefit from more people, incentivising women to have children is the most efficient method. Firstly, with many countries being both over and underpopulated, and with people who are older and younger, migration could help solve both these issues. By migrating people from the more densely populated countries with younger people to more spacious ones with older people, both countries can benefit without the need for extreme changes. Additionally, as our second speaker stated, incentive is not the most efficient solution. According to Compare the Market, 1 in 5 Aussies won't have kids because it is too expensive, which is understandable due to the $20,000 to $50,000 cost for a baby's first year, as stated earlier. A lump sum payment for a child is insubstantial in comparison to this. And as our second speaker stated, there are more efficient options that can cut down this cost or help mothers cover it, such as childcare or healthcare. More importantly, money is only 1/5 of the reason that people do not have children, as our second speaker argued. But creating more affordable housing, allowing for better work-life balances, addressing infertility, and having better education have been shown to have more impact than a payment that may or may not have been spent on the child. You may be wondering how we know this. As our second speaker stated, when the baby bonus was brought in, it had an underwhelming change of 3% in the first year, and whilst this grew over the next few years, it soon fell even further than before, being described as a modest result at best by the University of Melbourne, as he stated. On the flip side to this, the Italian region of South Tyrol has the highest birth rate in the country, nearly 25% larger than the average, and it also has the most flexible work options and the most efficient child support system, according to the BBC. Do you see the correlation? So, whilst we recognise the issue of underpopulation, there are so many better long-term solutions that tackle the root causes, which will allow for cultural and benefits and will also solve the ageing population. In this point, they also talked about Aboriginal people. However, this is very flawed because Aboriginal people are more common in rural places, which are the areas that lack support. That is what we're trying to say. We're trying to say these areas need support. The Affirmative team has also tried to tell you that this system removes barriers for women wanting children, which can empower them. Whilst we agree we need to remove barriers for women wanting children, there is a difference between incentivising, which brings people in, and supporting, as our speakers have highlighted throughout our case. Of course, we agree that we should be helping mothers out with babies, but put bluntly, a payment with no guarantee that it will be spent the right way is not the solution. This system has many flaws, including people spending it in the wrong reasons or being lulled into a false sense of security with a relatively small amount of money. Young mothers in particular may see a few $1,000s and think it's enough for a childhood, but, as our second speaker mentioned, it can cost up to $20,000 to $50,000 for the baby's first year of life, according to SBS. The fact is, 18 years of financial foresight for the on average $400,000 cost is not given by incentive. It hardly makes a dent. And whilst no solution is perfect and can eliminate these costs, there are certainly better alternatives, as our speakers have talked about. As I've already stated, services work very well in South Tyrol. People are clearly more inclined to have kids as these barriers are removed, hence why this is a much better alternative. To summarise, whilst we agree money can help, family services and more flexible work options might have a much greater impact that attacks the root causes without the risk, as our first speaker stated. They also talked about the health benefits of having children. Whilst we do not negate this, it links straight to their point of more people, that we want more people to have kids, which we've already proven is to be the case with support, because these support systems allow for people that previously couldn't have kids to have kids. For example, if work was going to be a deciding factor, this is not in the way, because of childcare. Now I will summarise our team's case. Our first speaker, Amy, spoke about how important the decision is and how personal it is and how the government should stay away from decisions like this. Her second point talked about how incentives imply that having children is the right choice, sending a misogynistic view to women. Our second speaker, Jason, spoke to you about how the impact of incentives are modest at best and that other solutions such as offering flexible work options for mothers will be far more important. He also elaborated on how this is the case. Therefore, our overall team case is as follows. Whilst we acknowledge that incentives might yield some benefits, they are far better solutions and it could bring detrimental consequences. In summation, the government and the taxpayers that support them do not have unlimited funds. If parents make the decision to have children, let's spend the money on supporting them through childcare, healthcare, or even education. We should be enabling children the opportunity to have a wonderful life. Incentives do not address the root causes of the issue it aims to solve, and we must dive deeper if we want to make a difference. Support, not incentivize. Thank you.
I now call upon a representative of the adjudication panel to come forward and award the debate.
Good afternoon, everyone. What a high standard of debate that we saw this afternoon. As you know, this is a debate that's adjudicated by a panel of 5, and so we don't provide individual feedback. Today I can announce in a unanimous decision that it was awarded to the negative team, Pembroke. Congratulations.
I call upon a member of the runner-up team to give a vote of thanks. I repeat, I call upon a member of the runner-up team to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you for debating with us tonight. We thank our adjudicator, the opposition. It was a great debate. We thank our coaches, and we just thank you all for being here.
I now call upon a member of the winning team to second that vote of thanks.
First, we would like to congratulate the affirmative team for also making it so far, because it would have taken a lot of effort and time. And we also appreciate that this is the second time we debated against them this year, so well done to them. And we'd like to thank all the adjudicators for making this possible, all the family, friends, and debaters who came here, even through all of that crowd at the front of the building. And we would just like to thank Debating SA and South Australia for making all of our dreams come true. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance. I now declare this debate closed.